everyone, I'm Robin, and welcome to episode 3 of my humble little podcast. For its previous 2 episodes, we're undergoing a bit of a change here. For my first 2 episodes, I was called the Bookish Knitter, but it's since come to my attention that there is actually a podcast run by the lovely Jeanette. You should all check it out. She is the Bookish Stitcher. That's all one word. And I think some of her viewers found me expecting to find her and were a little confused. And so because I certainly am not out to confuse anybody or, usurp anybody's podcast viewers or anything of that nature, I decided to change my name. So I'm still Robin. And you can still find me on Ravelry as halfpast92. You can still find me on Twitter as @medievalisting. But this podcast is now going to be called Stitching Between Pages. I've done more thorough Googling, and I don't think that name steps on anybody's toes. So if it does, please let me know, and I will change my name again. I'm mostly here just to talk about knitting and books, and occasionally the tea that I'm drinking, although today I'm actually drinking coffee. It's Sunday, May 3rd, and I haven't had my coffee yet, so I'm drinking my coffee and podcasting. And it's wrapped up in the cup cozy, one of the 2 cup cozies that Danny of Little Bobbin sent me. We swapped for her cup cozy swap, and it's really lovely, and it fits my mug really well, as you can tell. And it has this cute little rose button on it. I love that. So thank you, Danny, very much. And also thank you very kindly for mentioning me on your last podcast. And thank you to anybody who has wandered over to my podcast as a result. Thank you to anybody who's found this on their own, who is watching or has watched or subscribed. Thank you all. It's really a treat. I hope to get to know some of you better. And I hope that my name change will not cause too much confusion for anybody. This is still a knitting podcast in which I occasionally talk about books. Because as you can see behind me, I found a way to podcast in front of my stash is up, part of my stash is up there, some of my stash is in the gray bins, and some of my books, this is like a teeny tiny fraction. Most of my books are still at my parents' house. So this is just a small selection of my books. And I belong to the public library here. So I have been buying fewer books than I used to. So anyways, now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let me talk about what I'm knitting on. I think I'm going to start off with, you might remember from my previous episode, the socks that I just finished knitting, the Hermione's Everyday socks, were knit in a skein of mystery yarn that I'd bought while I was in New York City and have since, that was almost 2 years ago, I have since lost the ball band, so I have no idea what it is. And I showed you on my previous episode as well that I'd found the other mystery skein. It's gray, it's really pretty, it's variegated, and I have a half-finished pair of socks out of it. This is the Blueberry Waffle sock pattern, it's just a really nice, I'm really enjoying sock patterns lately where it's a simple, this is a 4-row repeat, just like the Hermione's Everyday socks, and I actually have another pair of socks on the needles, which I will get to in a minute, but that's also a 4-row repeat, and I think that's just the perfect number of row repeats to have. It's so easy, you do it once and you have it memorized. And you can pretty much just be on autopilot until you get to the heel and then again until you get to the toe. But it's more interesting than just knitting around and around and around. So I really love how it's knit up. I'm not enjoying this yarn as much as I enjoyed my other mystery skein. hopefully that doesn't, hopefully I don't decide sometime down the line to buy whatever this yarn is again, expecting to try something new and then realize, it's knit up really nicely and it feels, strong and sturdy and warm, but it's just not as pleasant to knit with, and I'm not sure why. It's a little bit splitty sometimes, and I'm not sure what the nylon content is and if there's anything in it besides I know it's not, there's no cashmere in it. It almost feels cottony to me, but I also know that there's no cotton in it. I don't enjoy knitting with cotton, so there's no way that I would have bought a yarn that contains cotton to knit socks out of. So anyways, I am about, I've probably done 2 repeats of the waffle pattern, the ribbing, and then 2 repeats of the waffle pattern on the second sock. So not too far yet, but I will get there. And I obviously started these since my last podcast, which was about 2 weeks ago. So not too bad at all. I'm knitting these on I'd say these are my standard sock knitting needles. They are Knitter's Pride Karbonz US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter, 40-inch fixed circular. And they're just nice needles to knit socks with. I really enjoy them. I learned the magic loop technique, and I've kind of taken off with that after I learned it. So that is one pair of socks that's on my needles. And I don't have any finished objects, but I'm showing these 2 things as works in progress first because they are sort of finished. This, my socks, I have 1 finished sock. And my Pebble Beach Shawlette is finished, but it needs to be blocked. So I will show it to you again once I have blocked it. I really love how this came out. It was such fun to knit. I mean, it took me, just 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks. It's knit out of KnitPicks Hawthorne Fingering in the Lads Edition colorway. And I suspected that I would have to dip into the second skein, and I did. For whatever reason, there are 100-gram skeins, but they're just shy of 400 yards. I think it's 387 yards or something like that. So I have almost a full skein of yarn left, but it is, and here you can see how really, it's such a lovely variegated, there's kinds of purples and grays, and then the bright pops of coral. I love this color. It was such fun to keep knitting and then get to another pop of coral and then knit for a little bit longer and get to another. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with this. I think the first task will be to crochet up a square for my blanket. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do with what's left, because I don't think it would be, maybe it would be enough for a pair of socks for me, especially if I knit toe up and was careful to use just half the yarn, but I don't have a kitchen scale at all. So it would be difficult for me to weigh it as I went along to make sure that I used half of it for the first sock so that I had half of it left for the second sock so that they matched. So that's one thought. I also thought about striping it in a pair of socks with just a plain, probably just an off-white yarn. I think that could be really fun. And I haven't done striped socks. I've never knit self-striping socks either, and I've been looking for self-striping yarn that appeals to me. Haven't found just the right skein yet. I've seen lots of things that I like, but nothing that's jumped into my shopping basket, if you will. So I thought about doing striped socks with this. My other option is that I've come up with anyways, is the sock head hat, which is the one that's just, several inches of 2x2 ribbing, and then you fold over the brim. And then just plain stockinette until the decreases. And I think that would work really well for this because I could just knit until I felt like I was running low on yarn and then do the decreases, and that would be it. And it would be a nice project to have that I could take with me anywhere. I could take it on the metro, I could take it if I was getting coffee with a friend. It would be really easy to knit and not have to pay any attention at all. So we'll see. This is definitely, you'll see this again. It's going to become something else. Don't know what yet. but it will become something else. So that's that. And I mentioned that I had another pair of socks on the go as well. And it is at last my green and cream socks. Yay! So, hang on, we're a little tangled here, and I think I'm mid-row, which is terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Anyways, I am mid-row. We'll just ignore that. So, green, no cream yet, I'm almost to the heel, just maybe 4 rows shy. This pattern is called Hedgerow. It is a pattern by Jane Cochran, free on Ravelry, and it's essentially a 4x2 rib. But once you finish the cuff, and I did knit the cuff a little bit longer, I think the pattern calls for about 12 rows of cuff, and I did about 20. I like a longer cuff. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing. So that's what I did, because they're socks, so you can adjust things like that. But then once you start getting into the patterned portion, the interior 2 stitches of the 4 stitches here becomes seed stitch. So you probably can't tell, but it's 2 rows of knitting and 2 rows of, you knit 2, purl 2, no. You knit 1 and purl 1, and then for 2 rows, and then for the next 2 rows you purl 1, knit 1 inside the outer column, which is always knitted, and then the purl stitches are always purled. And I really liked how it looked on Ravelry, and it has a good number of projects, and I liked how many other people's had turned out. I looked through the projects and saw what colors worked well, and I decided that it would work really well for this. And since the pattern is called Hedgerow, I thought that would be especially appropriate for green yarn. For those of you who maybe didn't watch my first episode, in which I discussed my obsession with green and cream socks, this is Malabrigo sock in the lettuce colorway. I don't think it's showing up quite as bright as it is in real life on my screen. It's just a very pleasant spring green color. And I am going to use, this is Cascade Heritage. There's a glare because it's white. Cascade Heritage sock. This is not the white colorway. I think the colorway is called Snow. It's just a softer white. And this yarn has nylon in it. This one does not. But I think it'll be okay because I tend to be hardest on the heels of my socks. That's where they always get holes. And this has nylon. So I think it'll be sturdy enough that I won't feel like I'm going to ruin my socks after 2 wears. So anyways, I started knitting and I did maybe 2 or 3 repeats. This is another, it's, 4-row repeat. And I wasn't sure if I liked it. Up close, it looks a little bit busy, right? That looks a little bit busy. But back here, I think it looks very pleasant. And I think this is fine because if people are looking at your socks that close, you probably have other things to worry. This is a good distance away to judge whether you like the pattern on a sock or not, I think. I don't think it needs to be inspected close up. So I am knitting these on, as you can tell, DPNs. I went to my local yarn store. I was actually going to film this episode on Wednesday this week. I had to work yesterday, which was Saturday, which has been my upload day. And so I just didn't have a chance. I was going to film on Wednesday, but the weather was beautiful outside. It was everything that I love. Springtime is very short in this part, is too short in this part of the country, but it's so beautiful. There's just those few perfect, sunny, breezy, warm but not hot days where all the flowering trees are in bloom. The dogwoods and the red buds are my favorite. All the azaleas, lilacs, everything is blooming and it's just so pretty. that month of springtime from daffodils and tulips through dogwoods is just so pretty. Everybody's allergies kick in. I'm sounding a little bit croaky. I know lots of other people are sounding a little bit croaky, but whatever. I love it. So I went for a long walk home, and I stopped by my yarn store and bought these double-pointed knitting needles because I wanted to knit another pair of socks and didn't have a second pair of US size 1 needles. So I bought these. These are ChiaoGoo. ChiaoGoo? I think they're premium stainless steel needles. I'm just using 4 of them. US size 1, again, 2.25 millimeter. They're really nice. They warm up really quickly. They're lightweight and slippery. And I guess maybe I'm coming around to metal knitting needles after all. I never thought I would, but here I am. So I actually ended up finishing my Pebble Beach shawl on HiyaHiya Sharps. These are US size 6, which is a 4 millimeter needle, I do believe, and I don't think they say on them. Oh, yes, they do. Yes, 4 millimeter. And this is a 32 or 36 inch cable. They didn't have a 40 inch cable. I mentioned in my previous episode that the join, I'd been knitting it on my Knitter's Pride cubics, and the join between the cable and one of the needles was getting a little bit loose, which was worrying me. So I decided, since I was at the yarn store, since I was buying needles anyways, I also bought some yarn, which I will show you. And I really like these, so I bought another pair. So I did maybe 2 or 3 rows and then the picot edge on these, which was very pleasant. So picot edge took a while. It took me probably 2 nights, not 2 nights of just knitting on that, but I spread it out over the space of 2 nights. So I just have to block it and it'll be done. The last knitted thing on my needles is my Bonnie tank top, which I have started the lace, as you can tell. There we go. I haven't done a whole lot on it. I have a theory about why that is. It's not because I'm not enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it, and the lace is pleasant and easy to predict, and there's still a whole lot of just plain knitting. But I do so much of my knitting while I'm watching Netflix or knitting podcasts on YouTube that to have the chart for this open, and I do want to have it open just because I don't want to make a mistake and have to rip back. I'd rather, check my chart every row and be right than just knit along the way I think it's supposed to be and realize 5 rows later that I've made a terrible, glaring error. But I haven't had a chance to print out the chart, so I've been having a split screen where I have my video on the left and my chart on the right, and it's just not pleasant. The video ends up being this big. And I have a nice big laptop screen, so that seems a bit silly to me, but I just haven't had a chance. I don't own a printer, so I haven't had a chance to print it off. So hopefully I can do that soon so I can get cracking on this, because it's so pretty, and I'm so excited. It's 80 degrees outside today, so it's definitely the time of year where I need more short sleeve things and sleeveless things to wear to work, and I think this one will be perfect to wear to work, and just to wear in general, but I'm very excited about it. I'm knitting this out of Juniper Moon Farm Findley, which is 50% merino and 50% silk, so it's super soft and drapey. It is a lace weight yarn, and the colorway is called Atmosphere. I am knitting it on my HiyaHiya Sharps. This was the first pair of HiyaHiya Sharps that I got. And these are US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter. And I believe this is a 24 inch fixed circular. I think that's right. And as part of our swap, I mentioned in my first episode that I really love bees, which is really true. And Danny very sweetly sent me a little set of stitch markers, and one of them has a charm that is a little bee. So thank you for those, Danny. As you can see, they are, here's one of just the plain, just has a little orange bead, which I think orange and blue are so nice together, so I thought they would be perfect to use on this. So thank you for those, Danny. I really appreciate it. And so that's that. And my other work in progress is not a knitted work in progress. It's my Granny Square crochet blanket, which I have put quite a bit of work into, as you can hopefully tell. It was, the last time I showed it, just 5 by 5. It's now almost 6 by 6. It's just 2 squares shy. This square is my Hermione's Everyday Socks New York City Mystery Yarn square, which I don't think the color is not going to show up very well. The lighting in here is not super great, and because it has holes, the camera can't figure out what to do with it. The rest of them are all from Danny. So I think these two are my favorite. This one I gravitated towards immediately, and I'd love to know what yarn this is. It's just grays and really pretty purple. And this one reminds me of a clown wig. I love it. It's so cheerful. It was, impossible to feel unhappy while crocheting it. I love all of them. I really like this one's just pretty blues. I really like this one. It's kind of browns and teals, darker teal and a lighter teal. It's really pretty. And I'd love to know what that one is. This one immediately reminded me, especially the way it crocheted up, of Captain America. I just went on Thursday night to see the new Avengers movie with my friends, which was fun. So that's what this one reminds me of. This one is watermelon, clearly. And then the other two are just, I'm guessing this is probably a Regia or an opal or something. And I have no idea what this one is, but it's really sparkly, and I've never understood the appeal of sparkly yarns, but it was so fun. This one is also sparkly, but less so. This one is really, really sparkly. I don't think you'll be able to tell, but it is. Promise. So I just have 2 more, and I'm really enjoying it, especially having some new yarns to work into it, and I received a couple other swap packages in the mail from, I participated in Kristen Yarngasm's swap as well with a few people, and so I have some other minis to show off. Now I've just realized that one set is next to me and the other set is over on my table, so I might have to get up and grab that real quick. But I'm really enjoying, I think every square has some sort of memory attached to it, and I'd be really curious to know, has anybody found a good way to keep track of what yarns are used where? So does anybody have good tips for making a chart to correspond to your blanket? I don't necessarily want to know everything about every yarn, but it would be nice just to be able to look up which yarns came from which source, whether it's making a note that this yarn is from a shawl that I knit for my mom, or, this was my first pair of socks that I knitted, or, this came from Danny, whatever. It would just be really nice to be able to make a note of that in a sort of organized fashion. And I'm kind of, as you can probably tell, I've sort of gone for a sort of circular method of making my blanket bigger. I didn't want to commit to a blanket that was 15 or 20 squares wide, which I could have done. I'm, almost at 36 squares now. I have, 34. So I didn't want to commit to something that was wide, or I didn't want to commit to a dimension. So I'm going to crochet in a square until I decide that it's big enough in one direction, and then I will continue in the other direction. So if I get to, I don't know, maybe 15 by 15 squares would be a good point to commit to 15 squares as one dimension, but I don't know. So it's going to get bigger slowly anyways. This is not a project that's going to go very quickly for me. I don't knit quickly enough, and I don't have a huge collection of scraps left over. I've pretty much used all of the leftover scraps that I have. So at least once, and some of them I've used twice, which I don't mind. So that's that. I've been keeping my scraps from Danny. I've used about half of each of the ones that she sent me. And I think I'm going to see if this is enough. I think it's probably just less than half of each of the minis. And I'd love to see if this yarn is enough to crochet one of the hexagons for the weekender blanket that I know Danny's hosting an informal crochet along. I know Tilly Trout is crocheting it. I just started watching Tilly Trout's podcast, and it's delightful. I think I'm very late to the party on that one. But I know she's crocheting it. Lots of people are crocheting it, and there's some really beautiful photos of people's works in progress. And it amazes me how quickly some of these people have been crocheting hexagons. But I've been keeping them in temporarily while I have just cakes of yarn at the moment. That's not true. This is clearly a ball. And I've been using, this is my yarn bowl, which was made for me by my brother, my younger brother. Not this past Thanksgiving, but the previous, so Thanksgiving of 2013, was knitting. We always spend Thanksgiving at my grandparents' house, and I made an offhand comment. I was sitting on their couch knitting, and my yarn rolled away from me, and I was like, this would be so much easier. I wouldn't have to worry about this if only I had a yarn bowl. And my brother was like, what's a yarn bowl? So I explained it's a bowl with a cutout for the yarn, the working yarn to go through so that the skein or the ball can roll around inside the bowl. And you can have access to the yarn and it flows nicely, but the ball is not going to escape. It's stuck. Totally expecting, didn't expect anything to come of it. And I opened my Christmas present that Christmas, and he made me this yarn bowl, which is beautiful. It's blues with sort of a browny overwashed color. It's really pretty. He did a really good job with it. He's in college now. He hasn't done a lot of pottery, I don't think. I think he's been busy with other things, but clearly I think he should go back to pottery because he's really talented. I actually keep all of my straight knitting needles, which I don't use very often anymore, but I like having them on hand, and that's always good to have extra knitting needles, I think. So I keep them in a big white pottery vase that he made, and he's like, I don't like this. I don't see any use for it. The colors didn't turn out how I was hoping, and I was like, I love it. Give it to me. I'm going to put all my knitting needles in it. So it's actually sitting, you can't see it. It's sitting on top of my bookshelf. So that's that. So I guess the next thing I have for you is the things that I've acquired, and I'm finally going to show you the yarn that I've been hinting at for the past 2 episodes. I have it, and I'm ready to show it to you. And I will also show you the yarn that I bought at my local yarn store, and some other little things that I've acquired through the generosity, through swaps, and my best friend sent me. We're really awful at sending each other like Christmas presents or birthday presents on time. So it just kind of, they're surprise packages that show up at random times of the year. So I ordered from Query Fiber on Etsy. There's her label, Query Fiber. And I've been admiring her yarn for quite some time. I think this is the first indie dyed yarn that I've bought off Etsy, which is so hard to believe that I haven't done that before. But I decided that it was time, and what better choice than Query Fiber, because number one, I am a Latin nerd, and her name is Latin, and that's pretty cool. But also I just really like her color sense. I think she has some really lovely yarns, and I happened to catch, I think I caught a sale, if I remember correctly. I ordered these several weeks ago. And they came just before I filmed my last episode. I think that's right. I think they came just before. So, anyways, this is one of the skeins that I got from her. It is her tweed sock base, which is 85% superwash merino and 15% of the nep, which is the tweedy bits, which is nylon. The colorway is called Vincent and the Doctor, which if you have seen that episode of Doctor Who, it's one of my favorite episodes. I used to really love Doctor Who, and I've sort of fallen off the bandwagon. It just became too complicated and convoluted, and as much as I wanted to like Clara, I couldn't, and I've fallen off the boat, and I'm really a little bit sad about that because I think Peter Capaldi is a great actor, and I think he could be a really great Doctor, but I'm just not that into it anymore. I really loved Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor, and I loved David Tennant. And I liked Matt Smith at first, and I really liked Amy and Rory. But I don't know. I'm not going to go too much into, I have lots of reasons why I don't watch the show anymore, but it is what it is. I've moved on to other things, as you sometimes do. But Vincent and the Doctors is probably one of my favorite episodes. The Doctor and Amy and Rory meet Vincent van Gogh, and it's just a really sort of touching episode. And so it's such a pretty colorway. I love it's so many different blues, but then there's oranges and yellows, and then it's tweed, and I think it's just really pretty. So that is one. And the other one I got, this one is 600 yards. I'm going to have to think really hard about what to do with this, because I could probably make 2 full pairs of socks from 600 yards of yarn, or a pair of socks and something else. Because I never use a full 400 yards to knit myself. I have really small feet, so I don't use a full 400 yard skein to knit socks. The Hermione's Everyday Socks, I had enough left to crochet a square into my blanket. I sent it out as part of, I think, 3 separate swaps. So I hope all of you enjoy it. And I still have a little bit left over. So I maybe use 300 yards to knit myself a pair of socks. And I don't knit, as you can tell, this is probably my ideal cuff length. I measured this one off my Hermione's Everyday Socks, which I measured off the previous pair of socks I'd knit, and I'm measuring my Hedgerow socks off of this one to determine how long I want the cuff. I probably should just measure it and make a note of that and use a tape measure. That would be too easy and logical. So, anyways, it's not like I knit my socks with super short cuffs. As you can tell, the cuff is about as long as the foot. Rather small feet, as you can tell. I wear a US 6.5 shoe, which I believe is a UK 4.5. Small feet. So anyways, I'm going to have to think long and hard about what to do with this, because there is so much yarn, and it's super squishy. So this is her 100% superwash merino sock yarn base. It doesn't have a base name. The colorway is called TARDIS in the Park, which I think is, it's blue with a rainbow. There are reds, yellows, greens. Obviously it's on blue, but then there's kind of purpley bits as well. And my guess is that this comes from, I think is it the last episode or one of the very last episodes in which Amy and Rory appear? The Doctor is in Central Park in New York City. So that's my guess as to where that's about when I fell off the bandwagon. Once Amy and Rory died or left the show, they didn't really die. I don't even remember. Whatever. Anyways, once they were no longer part of the show, that was kind of the last straw for me that I stopped watching. I watched the first season with Clara, kind of on and off, intermittently, not as it was aired. So, oh well. But the yarn is super pretty, as you can see. So I think it's going to make some really fun socks, and I'm really excited to see. I do think it's going to be socks. So I'm really excited to see how it knits up and what it looks like, how this transfers into a cake, transfers into a knitted object. I always feel like that's really fun, because sometimes it's hard to know how they will look when they're knitted up. I have a better idea what this one will look like than I do this one. But I could be totally wrong about this one, so we'll see. So I mentioned that I went to my local yarn store on Wednesday. I got off the metro, a stop early, and walked home, stopped at the yarn store, and stopped at the grocery store, which probably made for about a 1.5-mile walk, which it was so beautiful outside. I was just happy to be outside. So the yarn store was having a trunk show of Hazel Knits yarn. And I've used Hazel Knits yarn once. It's in my Stephen West, not this past mystery knit along, which was called Exploration Station, I think. And I didn't do that one, but I want to. I think the shawl that came from it is really pretty. But the previous one, and I'm drawing a blank on what the name of the shawl was. Nope, it's not going to come to me. But that shawl has a skein of Hazel Knits. It's a beautiful, deep, rich blue that I bought in DC. A skein of green fiber spates 4-ply, scrumptious 4-ply, that I bought in Oxford, and a skein of yellow, I forget the colorway, but it's a yellow, golden yellow Madtosh sock yarn. So it's yarn that I bought in special places. So the shawl is one of my favorites. I wear it a lot. It's super cozy. But that's the only skein of Hazel Knits that I've used. I have a skein of her DK weight yarn in the Jam Session colorway, which is kind of a rich strawberry jam. I'm looking to see if you can see it in my stash. It's that one right there. Kind of underneath the green and above the blue. It's almost too dark to tell what it is, but it's a really pretty color in person. And I'm saving that for something. I'm tossing around some ideas for a hat design at the moment, based on medieval tiles, floor tiles. I was inspired last summer when the Bakery Bears, Dan and Kay, went to one of the abbeys, and they talked about the floor tiles, and I thought, wouldn't it be neat to turn floor tiles, specifically medieval floor tiles, because I am a medievalist at heart, into a knitting pattern. And I've been tossing around ideas. Initially, I thought some sort of scarf, but I haven't really felt like knitting a scarf. So now I'm thinking of a hat, and I'm thinking also of Cosmati tile pavement, which is, it's a very specific style, and I'll type out the name of it so that you can look it up if you're interested in seeing pictures of what these tile pavements look like. But they're multicolored, but also very directional. So they'll have circles, and then there will be straight lines going off in different directions, and they're very geometric, and it's kind of cool. It almost feels a little bit modern in its sensibility. And I think it's something that could translate really well to stitches rather than color work. I was initially thinking of color work, but I haven't knit color work in a while, and I'm not really feeling the color work bug. So I'm thinking of a hat now. It might just be something that I design for myself, but we'll see. We'll see if anything comes of it. I've been thinking, I need to sit down and start making some drawings and figuring out what stitch patterns I might want to use, and I haven't done that. So we'll see. But anyways, back to the Hazel Knits trunk show at my local yarn store. The focus of the trunk show was limited edition big wheels. They were probably 6 or 7 inches in diameter. All the colorways, Hazel Knits colors are just gorgeous. They're very saturated, and they're just beautiful. So anyways, big wheels were a little bit out of my budget. I can just about afford a regular size skein of Hazel Knits. But I couldn't justify springing for one of the big wheels as much as I wanted to, and there were some beautiful colors that if they'd had single skeins, I would have pounced, but they didn't. So what they did have were these teeny tiny little baby cakes. These are so cute. And So they had a whole bin full of them, and I kind of picked through and picked out these 3 colors. You can probably guess, I'm really feeling, there's the logo of Hazel Knits, this really spring green. I'm feeling this colorway lately. It's very similar to my socks. It's a little bit darker. This color is called Sedge, and the yarn, which is Artisan Sock, is 90% superwash merino and 10% nylon, and this little cake contains 50 yards. So I think it'll be fun to use for, I'm resisting putting it straight into my blanket and thinking about using it for tiny little color work somewhere. This one is called Bear Claw, and they're all the same yarn, the same Artisan Sock yarn, same company, Hazel Knits. I'm not usually a pink person. Pink is not really my color. I've never really been a pink person. I tend to like cool colors. I like blues and grays and greens and purple. Purple it probably still is my favorite color. It was my favorite color for a long time. I've never really been into pink, and I've been trying to experiment more with warm colors lately. I consider this it's a really warm brown. And this obviously has some orangey shades in it. So I'm trying to branch out of my comfort zone just a little bit. And this is the only one of the 3 skeins that I think I know what I'm going to do with it. I think I'm going to use it for some little colorwork hearts around the cuff of a sock. And I think I'm probably going to adapt from several different sock patterns. I think I'm going to start with a Homespun House, Molly's most recent sock design for adults. I think I'm remembering correctly that has hearts around the top. I don't really want the single little stitches sprinkled throughout that are in the contrasting color, but I love the hearts. I'm thinking like super cutesy socks, which is not really normally my thing, but I'm thinking of, maybe a little picot cuff. We'll see. I think it's going to be, something that I just pulled together from various different patterns. So it's definitely not an immediate project. I'm kind of going to sit on these for a while. The colors don't go together, and I didn't pick them to go together. But I'm going to sit on these for a little while and just admire how adorable they are. So that's that. And then I will show you the yarn that I got in swaps. There were 6 skeins in this little package from Sarah. We swapped as part of the Wool and Vine Yarns, Kristen's Yarngasm swap. And she sent me 6 skeins. I am in the process of crocheting up one of them. I realized I've never said this. I am using a USE 4 hook, which is 3.5 millimeters. And this is one of those, I think I talked about how much I don't enjoy knitting with Susan Bates's metal knitting needles, but this is the only crochet hook I have. Or Susan Bates crochet hooks are the only, I think 3 of them in various sizes. This is the smallest one. I have one that's a little bit bigger and one that's bigger still. So it kind of is close enough to meeting my infrequent crochet needs. So anyways, this is one of them. And then I'm not going to take the others out of the bag because she wrote me up a little letter, and they're numbered. She numbered them on the bag, and so I have a little letter that corresponds each number to what type of yarn it is. And they were 6 types of yarn that I've never used. So thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you as well for the tea and the little cookies you sent me, all of which are gone. So I don't have those to show you. And then I received another, I'm going to go grab it. I will be right back. So I received some other minis from Céline, who is in Alsace, France, which is pretty cool. I've only ever been to Paris, but I really am hoping someday soon to get to other parts of France. So this is my favorite of the mini skeins that she sent me. It's just beautiful shades of purple, and I don't think it's really showing up properly. But she sent me mostly, I love this one too, it's rainbow. European sock yarn brands, which I've tried. Like, this one is a Rowan yarn, but I've knit with Rowan yarn before, but I've never tried this one, and I love it's sort of a mushroomy gray brown colorway. I really like that one too. But she sent me things also that I've never used, which is so exciting. This one is a Regia, which I know so many people love, and the colors are just so fun. Like, how could you not love it? And I like this one too. So she also sent me some tea and chocolates. Again, they're gone. I did not wait to show them off to you all before I helped myself. So thank you, Celine. She also sent me, this is so cool, her friend crochets insects. How cool is that fellow? He's a fly, but I just want to have him. He's so cute. It's actually a postcard, and I will include her friend's name is Olivia, and I will include Olivia's website in my show notes, which, as always, will be underneath the video, where there's like that little text bar and it says show more. If you click show more, you can see I include all of the patterns I'm knitting with the needles and the yarn I'm using, the book titles that I've talked about, and anything else. So I'll include Cosmati pavements and crocheted insects. I wonder if her friend crochets bees, because if there was a crocheted bee, I think I'd have to buy it. More to come. I'm going to investigate. I also received, I think I'm going to hang up postcards on the wall, because I've gotten a bunch lately, and I got a bunch over the course of the past year or so, and they're just kind of sitting in that box there, not doing anything, and I think I should hang them on the wall. This one's from Danny from Bournemouth, it's just a lovely British. I've never been to Bournemouth. I've been to other British seaside towns, but never to Bournemouth, so thank you for sending me a postcard of Bournemouth. And then I mentioned that my friend Katie sent me a package, which included this postcard of the British Museum's reading room. Can I just move in? Broom cupboard would be fine. Who needs anything else when you could have all of those books? And I bet this dome is beautiful, if you could see the whole thing. I just want to live there. So Katie also sent me these beautiful buttons from the Museum of London. Hang on, let me make it so my finger is not over the flower. And they must be based on, I love this one with its little polka dots. They must be based on vintage buttons or something. They're made out of clay. You can probably hear them. So I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with those, but it will be something special. She also sent me a Museum of London tote bag, and I use these tote bags for everything. I always have a reusable shopping bag in my handbag. Virginia does not, but DC has a 5% bag tax, and I lived in DC DC proper long enough, that I started carrying a reusable bag with me everywhere I went. So I still do, haven't gotten out of the habit. And I use those bags to carry knitting. I use them to carry, packages if I'm going to the post office, or books if I'm going to the library, to return and then to bring back with me. So it's pretty, they get used very thoroughly. And last but definitely not least, she sent me this adorable little pouch. I think I'm going to use it for knitting notions, but again, these are the sort of things that just always come in handy, and I love it. I love the modern prints. I think they go together so well. And it's by Mabel and Bird, which I think is the greatest name, and I haven't had a chance yet to look up Mabel and Bird to see what else they do. I'm going to guess this is probably supposed to be like a makeup pouch or something, but made by hand in England. I don't know if they have an Etsy shop or anything. It just is, that's their tag. It's blank on the back, but Mabel and Bird. So that's that. It was such a lovely surprise. Getting mail, I love getting mail. I have some friends that I regularly write letters to, and mail is one of my favorite things after books and yarn. So I think I'm going to wrap up, hopefully fairly quickly, with books. I'm still reading Possession, but I've put it aside because of this, which is called The Mystery of Grace by Charles DeLint. And I absolutely love Charles DeLint's books. I've read many of his novels, many of his short stories. He's one of the rare authors where I think I almost enjoy his short stories more. But I'm really enjoying this novel, and like I said, I've really enjoyed many other of his novels. I think my favorite is probably The Onion Girl, which is about a character named Jilly Coppercorn, and she's an artist. Many of Charles DeLint's novels are set in a fictional Canadian city called Newford. He writes urban fantasy novels, and so they're not high fantasy, they're not like Lord of the Rings, but there's definitely magical elements set in the modern city. And I think he's really at the top of that genre of urban fantasy. So even though many of his novels are set in Canada, and he is a Canadian author, this one is set in the American Southwest. It's about a woman named Grace who meets and falls in love with a man named John. And there's a problem. She is dead. I've been reading this book. I would have finished it last night, but I was at work. It was a long day, you guys. And I got home and I fell into bed, and that was it. I was asleep when I got home. So I didn't finish it, but hopefully I'm going to finish it today. Usually, I think I said in my last episode, I have a book on the go that I read during my commute, and a book on the go that I read in bed right before I go to sleep. This book has been both of those. I have not picked up Possession in about a week because I've been reading this. So I really, really highly recommend this, and I'll put a few of my other favorite Charles DeLint novels in the notes as well, in case anybody is curious. Like I said, The Onion Girl is probably my favorite, but his short story collections, I think the most recent one is Moonlight and Vines, and that one I really love. Memory and Dream is good too, but highly, highly recommend. It took me a while. I tried to read a couple of books as sort of my nighttime lighter reading, and I failed. There was one that I read almost 175 pages before I finally gave up, and I'm a little angry about that. I committed several nights to that book, and it was just cliched, and it wasn't believable to me. And the other one I read, a dozen pages, and it just wasn't clicking. So I settled on this and have been very much enjoying it. Yesterday, on the way to work, I started reading A Wasp Among Eagles by Anne Carr, a woman military test pilot in World War II. And I have been reading a lot of World War I and World War II fiction lately. Not necessarily so much battle stories, and I think I mentioned this in my last episode, but more stories about people that happened to be set during the war. And so, back in February, on a whim, I'd gone to the National Gallery of Art to see their El Greco exhibit for the 400th anniversary of his death, he died in 1614. So I went to see that exhibit, which was fantastic. It was not a very big exhibit, it was just one room, but it was all El Greco paintings from Washington, D.C. area collections, which I thought was really neat, and a neat way of, there were El Greco 400th anniversary exhibits all over the place, but I think this one was really neat in that it was specifically D.C. area collections. And then I went into the Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian Museum, which I had not been to in years. I don't think I've been to it while I've lived in the area. I think the last time I went there was when I visited with family when I was still in school. And the Spirit of St. Louis, which has been hanging in sort of the lobby area above the floor for years. They've brought it down to the floor for restoration. And so you can see it very much up close. And that was so cool. That was why I went. But then I went for, a walk around to see what else I could see. And I went through the World War I exhibit and the World War II exhibit. And then I decided to stop in their gift shop to see if they had any books about women who flew planes. And they did. I bought 3. The other 2 are sitting underneath. There's my Vivid Blanket Squares. They're sitting there. I haven't read any of them yet. This is the first one I'm reading. It was on sale for $3.97. Of course I had to buy it. But I've just started reading it. It is about Anne Carl, who flew. She was a test flyer, and I believe she was the first woman to fly a jet plane for the Air Force. Yes, she was the only woman test pilot at Wright Field during World War II and was the first woman to fly a jet aircraft. So I'm really excited to get more into this and to read. It's not a very long book, but I think it'll be very interesting. And I think it'll be a neat story. So, nonfiction, of course. So that's that. And I think that is all I have for you. I will show you my mug real quick without the cozy, because you've now seen the cozy, and so that's that. But the mug says, this is a coffee mug, although I have drunk tea out of it many times, and I drink coffee out of my mug that talks about tea. It says, "Coffee, the favorite drink of the civilized world," which is a Thomas Jefferson quote. I bought it, my friend and I went to Monticello about a year and a half ago. And on a beautiful fall day. And so I bought that there. So anyways, I think it is about time for me to leave you. I'm going to watch this back real quick and then upload it since I'm already a day late. And I've confused all of you by changing my name. So hopefully those of you who stuck with me for my first 2 episodes understand and keep sticking with me. Of course, I'll understand if you don't. I hope that you've enjoyed watching. I hope that you have a lovely rest of your weekend, whatever little bit is left of it. I hope that you have happy knitting. I hope that you remember to be kind to people and that others remember to be kind to you. And that's it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.